We are here to celebrate Coach Matt Orr's 45 years of service to Biola University. Thank you all for showing up to be a part of this celebration. I have been at Biola for just 12 of those 45 years. I'm Mark Abkarian. I serve as the chair of the Department of Kinesiology, Health, and Physical Education. And in that time, it has been a pleasure to work alongside Matt in our department. When I think about Matt, I constantly get in mind the idea and image of a man who truly is committed to following a life after Christ, a man whose character and integrity and discipline and loyalty to his Lord and to those in his life is really unmatched. So thank you, Matt, for being an example to me, to our department, to so many students, athletes, so many people over so many years. My first memory of Matt actually comes from the day I was here for my interviews for the position that I'm in currently. And as is customary, oftentimes departments will take a candidate out to dinner. And so that evening we went to the Elephant Bar here in lovely La Mirada. And I was sitting next to Matt talking with him about things and told me how he had been here for so long, how all his kids had come through this school, and he really got his money's worth out of here. And I thought, well, that's great. I gotta keep this in mind. So thanks for that tip there. I'd like to just acknowledge his family. Pat Orr, his wife, is here. And many children and their children, whom I have not met, but I'll share with you who they are. Elizabeth and Dan Shackleton, their children Lena and McKinley. Sharon and Lindsay Orr with Caleb, Jackson, and Owen. Catherine and Jake Licklider with Nathan, James, and Abby. Joe and Christy Orr with Micah, Andrew, and Luke. And Sam and Kristen Orr with Riley.
Home team, all Biola grad.
They're all from here. So I'm going to turn this over to a very wonderful video that has been prepared for us, and immediately following that, the president, Dr. Barry Corey, is going to come up and share with us a few words, and from that point forward, we're just going to follow the program as it's listed, so each individual will come up and share some thoughts. So thank you again for being here, and with no further ado, the video.
What do you think?
Oh man, I'm happy for you. Happy for Coach Orr and sad as well for this class. But I love it.
What do you think about these sick looking shirts? T-shirts are fun. Let's take a look, man.
Check this out.
This what do we got?
Orr. That is best right here. School of Bear Lion.
That's right. Show me back.
Everything that Coach Orr's about right there.
Handcrafted and
Designed by the best. Or the best.
We better roll.
Here we go.
Last class.
Because it's the school of Bear Lion and being faithful over time that allows you to stand like Coach Orr. Coach Orr's an example want you guys to remember this space from our coach. He's an example of faithfulness. We need that. Our coach is like a modern hero. He's an example of faithfulness. We think about all of our lives just in this last week. Yes, Coach, I just want to say thank you for what you've done in my life. And then our closeout matters. But for me, Coach, looking back to your dad taking the class twice, and then taking, I think, 8 semesters in graduate school. If it wasn't for you, Coach, I wouldn't have got the ministry that's here. But more than that, I wouldn't have had the discipline in my life to continue to pursue Jesus when life got hard. So for you, because of you, Coach, I'm still following Jesus and not just following, but succeeding and flourishing in ministry. So I was fortunate enough to have Coach and my dad. And I went in the weight room and just I was so upset and so frustrated, so tired and hurt that, the result of all that was something that was so great. It taught me just to live life, like hard things. And so just I really love my dad, appreciate all of that. And I see that it's carried beyond just, his own kids and their lives. Guys like you for generations. So this is just a little small piece of what I imagine we're going to make here. I have lots of trophies. They're broken in my office. Lots of plaques. But in the near future, I'm going to make that true. I'm thankful. I'm literally lying if you said that we're never going to be able to work out the same after this class. We're doing it for Christ and we're pushing our bodies to the limit and just for spiritual act of worship. The size of a man doesn't describe a winner. If you see, I'm the most scrawniest one here, so you taught me that it's about the heart. And to praise and worship, that's all I ever want. It's not the size, it's the heart, and you taught me that. Thank you.
There's a part of me that trusted you, even though I didn't like what you were making me do. And inside I just had this confidence that you brought. That my husband. I've literally done things that I didn't think I would do. And I've seen myself change in ways physically and emotionally that I didn't ever think was really possible. So thanks for carrying me.
Thank you, Lord, for your faithfulness to me, for the opportunity to minister to young men. And I just pray and look forward to the day that I'll get to see my Lord and Savior. Praise the Lord. It's over. Thank you.
When I was a kid growing up in Boston, the legend who was in so many ways my hero was Bobby Orr. And so that lasted a long time, having that Orr as a legend until I came out here. And then there was another Orr that became the one that I thought, this is someone who embodies so much of what Biola is and so much of what our students need to see and to live and to feel and model and mentor. The School of the Bear and Lion. What a legacy, Matt Orr, that you have given to this institution, and not just you and your family. And a long time ago, you were that Colorado farm boy who, if I understand correctly, you were listening to the Biola radio hour. Heard about this school out here, and I'm sure Pat's glad you did. So you came out here, and two of you met and got married, and then as you continued on here, your legacy as a discipler, as a coach in the highest sense of the word, that Christ would call us coaches. You've embodied that, and you have lived that in profound ways. not just on the wrestling team, but what you did also. You kind of spread out into swimming and soccer, and took a couple of teams to nationals back in the mid-'80s. And I told Matt a few minutes before we started that if I could rewind the clock, I wish you were 30 years younger and we could work together for decades to come. I said that in front of one of your old students who you coached years ago, and that student said, well, he still could. He still has the decades left in him to do that. He said, I'm a grandfather now, my role is changing. And, but I really mean that. We'd start wrestling again, too. So I didn't say we will start wrestling. I said we would have if we run the clock. But all the accolades, Matt, that you have received, and there have been many, and there are many actually on the tables in front of you of remembrances, of awards that have been given to Matt, and these are testimonies to his leadership, to his coaching, to his expertise, to his excellence in so many other ways. You have coached students who became All-American and academic All-American recognition, but of everything that you've done, winning records and students that stood out in athletics, your spiritual contribution to this community is the greatest contribution that you have made, and the other ones were great. And I say that having known many, many who have been discipled under you, and for my early years here, I've kind of known your reputation a bit from afar because we don't share office space or anything, as a kind of strong and gentle and role model on campus. And then my son took your course early in the morning.
I still have a job.
Wow. And but even as a father, I almost get choked up saying this, to know that my son, before you retired, got to experience you and how you pushed him and motivated him and called him to reach for his best and his highest, not just in what he could do with the weight bench, but what he could do with Jesus as his Lord. And there are countless other voices in addition to my boy that are saying that about you, that are around the country and around the world. And my challenge to those of you who are still pressing on in the classroom is learn lessons from Matt Orr, and how he lived and how he walked and how he served and how he challenged and how he's called students these higher levels of excellence in everything that they did. A man steeped in God's word, a man of prayer, admirable father and husband and grandfather and friend and esteemed colleague of ours for these 45 years you've been teaching and coaching and pushing us in your work in kinesiology, health and physical education. There are generations that will follow, that will hear the work that you have done, and it's going to ripple on throughout the world, both in the depth of generations and the breadth of God's kingdom around the world. We will dearly miss you, Matt Orr, and we love you terribly, and you have made a profound and indelible impact on this community. And on behalf of the Board of Trustees and this entire community, we are profoundly grateful. Thank you, Matt Orr.
Well, my name is Chris Bernzeal, and I survived Coach Orr. What a great video, and I'm up here on behalf, or to represent, your first generation of soccer players. A group of men that there's several of us who had similar reactions. What does a wrestling coach know about soccer? And in the midst of me considering transferring to hated Westmont, I was talked into staying by some of the upperclassmen, and God changed my life because of that. I'm not going to look at you much because I'm going to get too emotional. And Pat, this is about you too. You were my second mom. You guys were my parents during my years here, and God used you to change my life. But I speak on behalf of a lot of people here who love you desperately and are so excited about today. So let me get to this. I'm not going to look at you anymore. It's not going to work. I'm a pastor and I was only given 5 minutes. Dang it. But I will keep this short. It's funny, I went to Biola here and then went to Talbot and was trained to be a pastor. But I tell you what, sitting under the shepherd coach, that is Coach Orr, I learned how to be a pastor in the weight room, on the soccer field, and under your tutelage and in your house. Instead of the pastor's pulpit, I got the coach's clipboard. And instead of the church pew, I had that humid weight room, those horrid hills. I still hate those hills, Coach. You drive past there once in a while and I start shaking. And we had that brutal field, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Learned lessons there that have carried me through marriage, of learning how to be a husband, a dad, a pastor, a better man. And I'm so thankful for what God did. And I know, you've got people here, this should demonstrate to you the kind of love that is here for you guys. I looked up the vision and mission of Biola. I wanted to look at that, and it says, the vision of Biola University is to be identified among the world's foremost Christ-centered universities. And that was the soccer program and the wrestling program under you. A community abiding in truth. Oh my goodness, you are about truth. You got in my face about it all the time. Abounding with grace. Yeah, you showed that to me, I have to admit it. And compelled by Christ's love to be a relevant and redemptive voice in a changing world. And that happened on the soccer field. It happened in the weight room. It happened. Your message is not just about winning soccer games. It's about seeing beyond our college career to the wives we would be marrying and the times where we needed to serve and love as Christ loved, sacrificially, to a total release. And I'm looking around this room, and I know guys who sweated with me, and we talk about it often. Yes, we laugh about the crazy things. That Coach Orr that you all saw doing this, that's the coach we had and have still. I could go on, and this is, I'm just going to read, where it says, where is it right here? I like this in Matthew 9:37 through 38, when Jesus said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Well, God placed you two here at this school to do that, and you have done that, and you continue to do that. I just think of the Bible studies at your house, the times in the mat room where you called me and Lee Davis out. You two have just been an amazing couple and continue to be in our lives. Like I said, I represent many people or many players here, and here's something for Ray. As you retire from Biola, I wanted to share with you how much you've impacted my life. And Ray was the captain during the '87 season, when we went to Nationals. Billy Graham once said, a coach can have more influence in one day than a pastor can have in a year. Amen. There are many things we forget in life, but not the coaches who have made a difference in our lives. Even though it's been 27 years since I played for you, it seems like yesterday that we beat Westmont to win the championship and flew to Texas for the national playoffs. Thank you for being in the business of pointing young men towards the things in life that endure. And thank you for teaching us how to live for God in every aspect of our lives. Boy, there's so many. I'll just do one or two more here. I was Coach Orr's first recruit as he transitioned from wrestling to soccer. I'll tell you this is in a second. My first impression of him was, why would I play soccer for a wrestling coach? My dad and I did a college tour of the West Coast, starting in San Diego and ending in Santa Barbara. After a visit to Chapman, my dad and I discussed possibly not stopping at Biola. The conversation went like this: what can a wrestling coach teach me? Why would a college soccer team stay together if they were getting a wrestling coach? We decided to stop at Biola at our scheduled time, but would leave early and continue heading north. The short version is I fell in love with Coach Orr, and he promised me a great education, which every coach did. The difference with Coach Orr was he also promised he would give me everything he had to help develop me as a person. He also added that if I played my cards right, I might find the girl of my dreams at Biola. After all, he did. After 1 year at Biola, I did find the girl of my dreams. This October, we will celebrate 24 years of marriage. Matt Orr coached, mentored, taught, and loved me through college. He was second dad to me through it all. I love him. Matt, thank you for being a man of your word. And that's from Shane Thompson. And Renee, so many times in our marriage. Chris, call coach when we were having a disagreement. I was usually wrong. You two have served that to us personally, but to so many over the years. And I think there's no greater compliment. I'm friends with the Masters coach, Jim Rickard. We meet for coffee regularly. And I asked him what he thought of you. He sent me an email. It's a long one. An overall impression and memory of Coach Orr in relation to our coaching relationship. He always encouraged me when I saw him. Whenever we crossed paths, his face would light up like I was a long-lost friend, and he would begin to encourage me to continue what I was trying to do at Masters with my players, to not get discouraged or sidetracked. He genuinely appreciated my desire to have my players honor God with their abilities, to use soccer as a platform to share Christ and to grow young men in faith in Jesus Christ. He was highly competitive, obviously, but he never talked to me about the wins or losses, the good years or the bad years. It all centered around the privilege we have to impact young men in their personal lives and the faith. He goes on, but Coach, what a reputation you have at this school, in this community, amongst the alumni, and amongst other soccer coaches. You stand out, you both do. Pat, you are a special woman. This is as much about you as it is Coach. So we love you guys. And before we went to playoffs, to the semifinals, we burned a jersey to get us all fired up, and so Coach Rickard wanted me to bring you another one just to see. He said, he's not working for Biola anymore. Maybe he'll come to Masters. So I'll leave it at that. We love you, Coach. We do.
I'm glad to hear Coach is so competitive. As Chris returned to the chair there with the Masters College shirt, he said, well, we can use it for a bonfire. Preach the word. As I was talking to some of the guys that I've been thinking about coming up here, I get to spend some time with Coach because the best thing Coach ever said to me was this. We were sitting in the back of the gym, and I was waiting for him because, he always used to come out of the locker room, sit there and get his shoes tied and get ready for practice, and I was waiting for him one day. I was waiting for him because I dated his niece 3 times. And I said, Coach, I dated your niece a few times. He said, I know. I said, Coach, if it's a problem, let me know because I'll stop and, it'll be done. And he said, no, it's okay. We were hoping she'd marry a youth pastor. Not that she won't necessarily need to marry you, but, it's fine. And so thank you, Coach, obviously, for that conversation. There's so many memories walking around here. I get to come down and see Coach a couple times a year, and we talk and chat, and we talk in his living room. And I'm a Talbot grad, but I did the philosophy thing, but I still have 3 points, and they all start with M. So even though I didn't get my MDiv, I still learned a few things on the Talbot preaching end. The first M is motivation. And just sitting in Coach's living room brings back memories every time I'm there. I was ready to go to UC Davis as an electrical engineering major, and everything was all set, no problem. A few things happen. I end up here on campus at Biola. I didn't stay with Chris. That was on the night, yes, and I still came despite spending the evening with Chris. Colin Aiken took me to biology class, and I still came. But that night, we were in Coach's living room, right? His athletes, you spend time in Coach's living room. Pat makes some treats, and we spend time in Coach's living room. And that night, he was talking about eternal motivation and the ability to think about not just the motivation of winning games. That's what most of us grew up doing. Why did you practice? To win games. Why did you work hard? To win games. But there was something different. And the eternal motivation was to glorify Christ. Whatever you did, if that was your motivation, and that was what you worked at in practice, and that was what you worked at in the game, and that's how you treated your teammates, and that's how you treated your opponents, then you win every game. You win on God's scoreboard every game. And that motivation that spills over into how you treat the people that you come in contact with, your coworkers, your family, and that eternal motivation of glorifying God in everything is what you saw in the video. It's why you live so hard. Not just to get on the field, not just to win a starting position, not just to win a game, but to glorify God, because God's given you that moment. And what are you going to do? You're going to return it in worship back to Him. And as I sat in his living room, God said, you know what? This is where you need to go to school. You need to learn about eternal motivation. And it was so meaningful and impactful to have Coach in my life for. I played for him for 5 years because I redshirted a year. And don't laugh at it. It seemed like 8 or 9 at the time. But then I got to coach with you for 4 years. And in the weight room and working with Coach alongside of him, I learned about the second M, which is maniacal work. There's a work ethic with Coach that's maniacal. There's a mania about working in the weight room. Everybody that's been in Coach's class understands that there's a mania, there's a craziness about working in there. And you just have to understand that following Christ has called us to be a little bit different. He's called us out of the world. He's called us to be different from the world, and understanding what that work means in our daily lives and how that transformed us. Took my daughter on a tour of Biola with the admissions department, her first official college tour of any kind. And we were there, and they were asking me, if they found out I came to Biola, when did you graduate? Well, 91, 96, and I'm old. But along with Chris, I had the best professors on campus. I had some of the best professors in the world in my field. And no class, no teacher taught me more about how to live my life daily than Coach did in that weight room, on the field every day. Good was okay, but wasn't enough to glorify God. And some days you have a bad day. A lot of days you have bad days, but are you still striving? As it talks about in 1 Corinthians 9:25, are you still, or 9:24 is running that you may win. Why? Because we do it for an imperishable wreath. We do it for God's glory, and if that is your motivation, that is what you're pushing towards, then you can win every day. The third M for Coach was, he taught me to be a man of God. When I got the information for Biola Soccer, it says, Biola Soccer understands that sports is a microcosm of life. And when I went to Grace Brethren High School in Simi Valley, I became the athletic director. The goal of Grace Brethren Athletics is to make young men and women more like Christ, because sports is a microcosm of life. Sports is what we do. And so when we were doing sports, it's a tool to make us men of God. It taught me to be a shepherd. That sometimes is coaching, but a lot of times it's being a husband and shepherding my wife in a hopefully in Ephesians 5 sort of way. It's shepherding my children, hopefully in Ephesians 6 sort of way. It's also then understanding that no matter what we do as young men, used to be young men, as we get older, is that we need to build behind us. In the book that Coach always used to pull quotes out of called The Edge, there's a story about a bridge builder. And it talks about an old man who builds a bridge across a chasm that that young men couldn't cross. They didn't have enough experience. And so he built a bridge that other people could go across the bridge. Coach, you've done more than build bridges. You've built bridge builders who then have gone out and built bridges for those who follow them. And the thousands of people who've been impacted by the small impacts you've made in individual lives. It may seem small, but they have exponentially grown. And I want to thank you for that, and it's been an honor to be part of this community. I mean, when these guys walk in, we all were in the weight room. We all sweated and worked really hard for God's glory. Yeah, to win, and yes, for God's glory, but then there was also this point where we were trying to please you. we were trying to make you happy. Because, as Chris said, you were like our dad. And we just want to let you know how much we appreciate you and thank you for what you've done.
Bittersweet is the word that comes to mind, isn't it? It's kind of like being at a memorial. It's bittersweet that they're home. And we'll talk more about memorials in just a minute here, Coach. By the way, did you know that Matt is his middle name? It's Coach, Matt Orr, right? It's Coach. And as such, does that phrase ring a bell to any of you guys? Ad nauseum, Coach. I remember the words as such. I never knew. I finally this afternoon went and looked at what does as such mean. And I guess it's a therefore. But not only did he teach us about X's and O's, guys, he taught us about life. He mentored us. And he was a life coach. But I'm excited to have those memories of just saying, yeah, love the man, but get rid of the as such. All right? Anyway, matchmaker. Guys, I think you've already figured it out that he was a matchmaker. 41 years ago, Coach Orr said, Paul, I need you to sit and do bounce sheets for me this week. And I got a wrestling tournament on the Biola floor. And little did I know, he sat me next to this cute little blonde. For 3 days, we did bounce sheets. I didn't even know much about it. He tried to get me to wrestle. I said, come on, Coach, look at this body, By the way, that pretty little blonde 40 years later sitting right back there, Coach. Thank you. Matt and Pat were the first people we told we were engaged. I couldn't wait to tell them because they helped put us together. But what's interesting is that he had this prayer harem for his wrestling team. I'm not a pastor. I get to say these things. Frankly, he understood the necessity of prayer. And I don't know how many girls you have, Coach, but I know that those girls were faithfully praying for your men. And when you look at the history of the Biola sports programs coming out of wrestling and soccer, there are more pastors and missionaries sprinkled throughout. It's unbelievable. And I think it has to do with that setup of prayer and partners. Thank you for doing that. There's a lot of stories to tell. I had the privilege of going in 2000 with Coach Orr to Japan. And just in case you all are wondering if this is an actually true story or not, just take a look at the last page in this book. All right, this last page will bring proof in case there's no one that was on that trip with us. But one of the players at Biola, Bo Russell, was a recruit. Dad was a missionary pastor in Okinawa, and we took the whole team that year. And our missionary host arranged side-by-side shiatsu massage. And we were so excited. You're exhausted at the end of a trip. We're laying there, talking to each other, looking, just enjoying it. This is an all clothes on, towels over you massage deal. And this pastor had a couple in his church that did this. So we said thank you afterwards. Pat got out his album. And he started, yeah, this is my wife, and this is these are my children, these are my grandkids. Oh, you didn't have grandkids back then, but he went on and on, probably 5 minutes, just showing his picture. He was so proud of his family. Got into the van, and on the way as we drove away, Pastor Bo said, hey, how'd you guys like that massage? Matt goes, that was so much, I just needed. I made great friends with the lady there, showed her, and talked about our kids. He said, did you know she was blind, Matt? Anyway, I enjoyed it. I don't get it. I knew that at the time. Coach Matt, guys, was known for his manliness. All right, you guys all know. I don't have to say, right, Coach? You did it right. There's a little bit of that head nod that goes when he says that. Okay? But as you know, soccer goalkeepers are either smart or they're brave.
Oh,
Psychotic, that's another word. But anyway, in 2002, I want to bring you, we've had a lot of character studies about what Coach did, but I want you to hear about what he also did to one of his players. And Greg Rudiger is the name. Greg, I hope you're not here today. Some of you may remember Greg. Greg was this goalkeeper that probably should have been a wrestler, okay? I mean, he was big, he was tough, and he thought he was tough. And one afternoon, I guess that was just newly in your coaching career, as I was Matt's assistant coach, this kid had the audacity to challenge Coach to a wrestling match right there and told him he'd pin him. And the guys who knew what was about to happen were just egging it on. We knew what might happen. Well, Greg rushed Coach and put him on his back. And we're going, no way, our loving Coach is down. Coach no sooner rolled him over, put him on his back, and held him there. And I'm telling you, it was ridiculous, jubilant cheering for Coach. All right? I will never forget that. You know what Matt did? He just walked away coolly as if it was no big deal. That was one of the highlights, Coach, of my coaching career with you. I also want to recognize Pat, because I don't know how many of you here know that there was a time in which the Lord almost took Pat home. And Matt, you wouldn't be the same without her, would you? And you know that, and we know it. And I'll never forget going to the hospital with Matt, and as we prayed for Pat, it was a heart problem that was real serious. And God has saved you guys. There was a reason and a purpose for that. But one of the biggest lessons I learned at Biola was from a gentleman named Howie Lyons. Some of you may remember Howie Lyons. One thing, we never remember the message of a pastor, but remember who they are to us. Howie Lyons said, men, if you're going to go into coaching, be sure the one you marry understands that. All your hours are going to be after hours and on weekends. Thankfully, I've still got 40 years under the belt. But Coach, you taught me the second thing that I'll never forget from a professor here. And you said this, when you retired from coaching, which was bittersweet, you said, Paul, I have a new ministry. And my new ministry is without newspaper articles, trophies, recognition, doing something for my children. I'm serving my children. And secondly of all, I'm serving my children's children. And I'm going to be content with that. I think many of us can learn from that. It's a humble place where you serve. And when you serve your children and your children's children, there's great reward in God's kingdom. And Matt, I will take that with me forever. In the near future, I probably consider the same thing. I have 9 grandchildren. You must have 29, but you're the same. Or you will. One more thing, I want to leave you just a minute here with a poignant moment. Having teaching parallel soccer classes with the legend is tough, okay? I got the 8:30 Tory Honors kids. Yeah, Coach got the 10:30 jock classes, right? Bottom line, the sleep-in jock classes. Anyway, we usually lost. I think we were 7-1 in years, and our deal was the losing coach would always bring a t-shirt to the winning coach in front of his class, all right? So, I restarted the game. It was about 7-3. And last year, something happened that I don't think Coach will ever forget, and I will either. Coach wasn't even sure he wanted to come, because I think he read the cards and was about to weep. But I hired the referees that night, and we were given a PK that was a little questionable, right? A little questionable. We were ahead 1-0. The referee comes as he's walking by the bench. He says, Coach, watch this. He says, 10 seconds left. Oh, that was it. I said, Coach, ref. I said, how many seconds? 10 seconds left. Watch this. He gives my TA a red card right there in front of the bench. They were happen to be friends. He was just going to have fun because it wouldn't make a difference, right? The other team, Matt's team, puts the ball down, one long strike to the far side, a one-touch shot, upper B in the far post, game's over. Coach Orr, that's not a tie, that's a win. We all know what a tie is like. You can lose a tie and you can win a tie. That was a winning tie. We gathered in the center of that field, and both classes raised Coach Orr up on their shoulders. Threw him up about 4 times and we caught him each time. But I have to tell you, that was a very special moment, Coach. I'll never forget it. We now call that, and tonight at 9 o'clock we have what we call the Orr Memorial PE Soccer Championship Tournament. So in your honor.
Yeah, what was that record?
One for Coach. Man, I want to just say in front of your colleagues, your friends, your family, and players, I want to thank you for being victorious in modeling a passionate and winning work ethic with the fabric of godliness woven throughout. I don't think I have the right to say well done, thou faithful servant, but the two of you together. And the last shirt you're ever going to get from me is a ministry partner shirt. It's a Seahorse jacket, sir, for you. For partnering with us in ministry all those years. Thank you, sir.
While a mother's wisdom and godly desire for her son got me to Biola, little did I know one of the first students I met at the downtown LA dorms would become my life partner in a lifetime of service at Biola. Love you, Pat.
The door to my career at Biola was opened by three men who impacted my life in college. Colin McDougall, an English teacher, coach with a missionary heart, started a wrestling program my freshman year. I had my wrestling. I think God has a sense of humor because my high school dream came true. I wrestled at Adams State in Alamosa, Colorado my senior year, but wearing a Biola uniform. As Adams State hosted the NAI National Wrestling Championships that year. I later coached with Colin McDougall as an assistant and then followed him as head wrestling coach at Biola. Dr. Ed Norman impacted my life and career when he became my soccer coach my freshman year. Yes, I got my football, but Biola called it soccer. Freshmen had to ride the buses at 5:30 a.m. in the morning from downtown LA to the La Mirada campus for classes. So the only way a freshman could get on campus was to be on an athletic team. Well, I knew that cross country was a definite no. But they had this sport called football. Yeah, soccer. Well, I was fast, and who couldn't kick a ball in that big net? Right, Phil? So my dream was coming true. I had my wrestling and football. Little did I know, God was preparing me for a lifetime of service to Biola. Because 15 years into the wrestling, Biola dropped the sport. But my soccer background opened up the head soccer job for me. Other men who contributed to my career was athletic director Charlie Sauer, who impacted me at the beginning of my coaching, and Dave Holmquist, who was there when I finished my career. Two individuals who influenced me as a teacher, faculty member, were Dr. Roger Soule. He was my second department chairman. He helped me publish, advance in rank, and supported my advanced degree. Dr. Walt Stengel, Dean of Sciences, who has been God's hand of encouragement and support as I finish my career. If a coach is asked why his teams are successful, talent is a given. But one valuable asset is your medical staff, and Biola has a big leaguer. A lot of athletic success at Biola is due to John Weesey and his staff. Thanks, John. Where are you, John? I want to leave you with a word of encouragement. Motivation is essential in life and an absolute in coaching. Total release has been the theme of my coaching career. Colossians 3:23 says, "Whatsoever you do, work at it with all your heart, as for working for the Lord and not for men. Since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward." The greatest championship trophy in the world. Purpose. That purpose brings passion. That passion ends in commitment. One of the first things we do in my teams, in my classes, is we start our class out with a focus on discipline. Because God says that we need discipline for godliness. And so we go through a series on discipline. But the second series we move into is 1 Samuel chapter 17. I have some bear and lion shirts that are here. They're complimentary. Help yourself to these shirts. But these shirts came out of this theme here. If you expect to face the giants of life, you must graduate from the school of the bear and lion. I tell these athletes, I says that Biola degree is important. But if you graduate with that Biola degree and don't go to the school of the bear and lion, You've wasted all your money on that. Don't graduate from Biola and not do your bear and lion work. The best army in the world stood in fear. Best equipped army. They had this enemy that's challenging them, standing on this mountain. And their knees were knocking. These were the best equipped men in the world. A 5-star general. Where's our leadership? Ineffective leadership. But out of the back comes a young man. And he says, who is this heathen that he should defy the armies of the living Lord? The Lord who was with me when I fought the lion and the bear will be with me when I defeat this giant of life. Don't forget to pick up your bear and lion shirts, and that if you want to face the giants of life. Thank you, Lord, for an awesome career. I've been the one that's been blessed. Thank you.
I'm not going to take the time to say things that other people have already said, and many of you know personally. Time is running late, and you need to have lots more conversations before you leave. So one official act I have at this point is to present Matt with a certificate of appreciation for 45 years of service presented to Coach Matt Orr in grateful recognition of your contributions and commitment to Biola University, signed by David Nystrom, our provost. We're doing